The new Tropic just because everything that they've done so far, starting with the film festival, which I think is the reason they're successful. I think it started with the 48-hour film festival, has been a huge success and has been all about Miami. So when it came time to talk about humility, we didn't know anyone better to choose. And so at this time, the 4 members, including Liz is hiding over there, but we're gonna let them talk about humility.
Hi. So, yeah, we're the new Tropic. That was a hell of an introduction. Chris, Rebecca, Bruce, Liz, Bruce, that's my name, like Bruce Willis, Bruce Lee, Bruce Wayne. I share my name with some pretty great people. We're here to talk about, oh wait, that's us too. You know, doing our thing. Humility, which inherently is not an easy thing to talk about. We didn't know what to do, but whatever, we're making it up as we go. We're great at it. As Malik told you in that amazing intro. But really what you need to know is what we do, why we're up here. How many of you, by a show of hands, know or read the new Tropic or been to an event? Yay! You're welcome. If you don't know, shame on you. But I'll tell you all about it. So we create a daily email newsletter that curates the news. We select some of the top stories we think will affect people in our audience and give them a little rundown of what's happening in town so you better understand Miami as it's changing. We do our own original daily content, exploring all kinds of topics from business to the environment to just fun spots, places to get food, cafecitos, whatever. And then we do our own creative events to help build a community, like you people in the room. We're only a few months old. And some people say, like, wow, you guys are really polished. And we're like, I know, right? But we've only been around for about 4 months now since we launched, and we launched from zero. We had another organization called Where By Us, but we decided just to launch from zero. And in a few months, it's been a very humbling experience where we've grown to a couple thousand of active, curious locals who live like they live here. And in that process, we've learned a few tips on humility and growing a business in Miami.
Okay, so we're going to teach you 5 things that taught us about humility. And we're going to use some help from a great guiding light of humility, Han Solo. So you should definitely do everything right, and you should do it all by yourself all the time. Yeah, that's bullshit. You can't do anything by yourself, really, and that's why we have each other. That's why we hired Liz. That's why we hire amazing photographers and writers, some of which are out here right now. If you've written for us or done a story for us, if you could raise your hand, if there's a couple. Yes, thank you. You guys are amazing, and we love working with you. We have great advisors. We have a board who helps us when we get stuck. We have an amazing investor, so thank you for Knight Foundation for that. We have people who put up with us. My wife, who's not here today, she puts up with a lot from me, so thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Lauren. So, yeah, Jess, I don't know if you're here, but all right. And sometimes what you build just doesn't work the first time around. Like for us, we had like some really nasty bugs when we launched. Fortunately, we had members who helped us out, and the only way we knew about that stuff was people would tell us, "Hey, this function isn't working. Like, I can't get into this particular thing," and we could fix it right away. So it may seem obvious to you guys, but we really hate the myth of the lone entrepreneur. Because it just doesn't exist. There's no solo genius. And you have to recognize your support networks and the people who work with you to accomplish a goal. So when you make something great that people like, think about who helped you make it and send them a note, make a phone call, let them know that the thing that they did for you or with you was really awesome. So, tip number 2, you should have everything under control all the time, forever. So Bruce said, people tell us that our products look really polished or seem really polished and professional, and that's awesome to hear, and we love it. And then we go back to the office, which is right now Chris's apartment, and we laugh because we know what a shit show everything we make is, right? And if you're a creative person, you know this feeling, right? Like you put something out into the world and people like it, and you're like, whoa, they like that. Ooh. And so sometimes you're gonna, it's really easy for us as creative people and makers to see the holes in things. You don't have everything under control. You need user feedback. And it's good to remember that people can forgive your little mistakes when you screw up, if you're honest about it and you admit it, right? We screw up all the time. We're a team of 4 producing a daily media product. Like, things happen. The other day, I got an email from an awesome reader who was like, hey, dummy, you put Medicare instead of Medicaid in the newsletter. Don't do that. And I was like, yes, you're right. That was really stupid, and I'm sorry. And she was like, no, it's cool. I like what you're doing, just a heads up. So that stuff is really helpful and awesome. So just admit it and say thank you for people letting you know. You should focus on exponential growth all the time, right? Like, that should be your main goal. So we hear this a lot because we're a startup, and that's what's valued in this industry and this business. But the more we work on our business, the more that we realize that our business is about building and serving a community. It's not about, making, we need to make technology to serve that community, and we need to make cool things to serve that community, but ultimately the community is the core of our business. So it takes time to build a great, strong, and organic community. We're not growing 1,000,000% a day, unfortunately. So you're going to hear a lot about making your business or your project or whatever scalable, and that's really important. But it's also really important to make things well and make them right on a small scale and test them and prototype and go to your clients and talk about this thing that you're trying to do before you scale. There's not a lot of this conversation out in the startup scene. Like, we always want to talk about how great we're growing. And when we go talk to clients, we have to be really honest about the size of our community. Right now, we're pretty small. Sometimes our community of a few thousand people gets compared to people who have hundreds of thousands of page views every single day. But that's really not the metric that we're chasing. And it's hard to shift that conversation when you're trying to sell against a different concept. But we're taking time to build something that's organic and involved and engaged. And our engagement rates, that's paying off for us right now. Our engagement rates are 5 or 6 times the industry average in the newsletter and on the website with time on site metrics and things like that. And we think that we're making a bet that in like an attention-starved world, engagement matters and engagement counts. And we value that relationship, and we think that it's better long-term than, a glance at a display ad for your cat video or your Dolphins cheerleader photo gallery. So yeah, growth. It's important. It's not that important, maybe. Okay. You should definitely focus on the bottom line. We're totally turning a profit. No, we're not. Our company's young. We lose money. We lose several $1,000s a month. We're making money, but we're spending more than we make. And that is common for a business that's as new as we are. But we also don't hear about this much in the startup world, right? Like we hear about people who get big injections of cash and have piles of VC money, and we're not that kind of company. We're never going to get that. But in many ways, you can learn the most when you have the fewest resources. So your constraints as a creator and a creative will make you make better things. And they'll make you release things into the world before they're completely baked. And that's good because it helps you learn about what it is that you're making and who wants it. And sometimes you're going to make stuff that fails, and that's okay too because you're still learning. So yeah, the bottom line is really important. Like, we try to run our business as, fiscally responsibly as possible, but you have to give yourself time and space to do something, from that creative space in you also. All right. We know exactly what we're doing all the time. You have to project confidence in the business that we're in. So when we go to talk to investors, when we go to talk to clients, we talk about our company is worth X dollars and the market is Y big, and we have these Z features that all the users want and love. And really, we've done our homework on that, right? Like, we studied it, we took time to make those analyses. But it's really an educated guess, right? I mean, it could turn out that all that homework we did just gave us bullshit answers that we wanted. So one of the things that we try to do is continually check in with audience, continually monitor our metrics and who's doing what. Because we don't know what's going to make the engine run, We know that with the right combination of support, we are seeing growth, we are seeing money come in the door, we are seeing those things that we need to make a successful business. But the projections that we started out with are not the things that, are true right this very moment. So when we started the new Tropic, we thought of it really as a media brand. But again, as we build this company, we realize that what we care about, what we've always cared about, and what matters to our users is the sense of community. And that's a new thing. And we have to learn how to talk about it. And we have to teach people that it's okay to talk about, community in that way as something that can be a viable business model. And we have to work on that ourselves, right? We're having to muddle through that every single day, thanks to people like some of you who use our products and tell us when we screw up or when we do something good. And we really appreciate that. So now Chris is going to take it over from here and tell you how to be great at humility.
So we've talked about some of the things we've learned along the way, but we wanted to talk in particular about one thing that's helped us be humble and helped us grow our business, and that's to invest in your own ignorance. For us, we see a whole lot of products out in the world, that services, organizations, et cetera, that are made without consideration for the people who are supposed to use them. Which seems like an obvious thing to consider, but there's just a remarkable number of things that are launched because we assume we know what users want or what their lives are like, or because we do what's easiest for us. Think about a government website that's organized by government department instead of by what users are trying to accomplish on that website. Because it's easy for you to make a site that way, but it's not necessarily what users want. And to be able to design for the people that you're trying to serve, you have to invest in your own ignorance. You have to be willing to say, I don't know, and to ask particular questions of people. And we have to ask, what's it like to be a user? You have to think about, what are the obstacles people face? What are the kinds of experiences that they have? And how are they going to perceive something? And you can't do that in a conference room, right? You can't do that with market research. You can't do that with demographic data. And you have to really go out and ask people. And one thing to note is that it's not a focus group, the kind of research that we do a lot of. We do this work for clients all the time, and it helped us grow our business too. It's not about focus groups, because that's like you sort of sit down, you ask people, do you like this thing? Or would you like this thing if we made it? Or watch this ad, did you like it? And that's a little bit different, because that's asking people for direct feedback. We try to think about, how can we understand people's experiences and design for them? It's more about sort of going out into the world and talking to people, like trying to find people with useful experiences and understanding what their insights are. How do they view the world? And it's this empathy-driven process that we try to practice in our work, which is about everyone has something valuable to contribute. Everyone's experience with something is a true and honest experience. If you make a thing and you talk to people about that thing, whether it's a restaurant or a website or a nonprofit, and some people say, my experience with that thing wasn't great, a lot of the time, all of our reaction is to be like, well, but that was because such and such. Well, no. Someone had an experience with your thing and it wasn't great. You have to find out what that was, right? Why that happened. And that's this sort of empathy-driven process that can be really difficult to practice, particularly in big organizations or in resource-constrained environments when you don't have the time or luxury, or feel like you have the time or luxury to invest in that. But you have to get out there and talk to people and welcome sort of every insight and every experience, because those are real and honest things. People are perceiving things and experiencing things the way that they are. And to know about that is to have really great insights about how to build your business. So we did that about a year ago when we wanted to understand how we could do more with Where By Us, which was an organization that we were working on a year ago. And so we went out and tried to find out what people's experience was like finding their local. It's sort of, how do you find a community in Miami where you feel at home? How do you find a place where you feel welcome, people you feel comfortable with? And we went out and we interviewed dozens of people. We did a lot of observation and immersion research. We tried to understand what are people's experiences. We followed people on their morning commute. We watched people in the morning as they got ready. We went out for drinks with people. We just sort of traveled the city with people, talking about their experiences, trying to understand what it's like to be them, to try and find a home in Miami. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. So we went out and we did that. And we got a whole bunch of different insights and quotes and comments from people, different experiences, different habits, different routines. Some people grew up in Miami, some people moved here, some people grew up, left, and came back. Variety of experiences, but in this kind of research, what we look for is the common among the uncommon. What are things that unite people who are very different? So all of you in this room have extraordinarily different backgrounds and experiences and demographics, but if we were to research something, whatever that is, we would be looking for the common among the uncommon. What's an experience that many of you share, even though you have different backgrounds? And if we can find those things, we find interesting things to work on. And so one of the things that we found from people was that people really liked the idea they were part of Miami during its renaissance. They liked the idea of feeling like they were in a city that was growing and changing and evolving really quickly. And that energy was exciting to people, even though it was really fucking abstract, right? It's like, well, I know that it's there somewhere, but I don't know where to go to find it. And we heard that from a lot of people. And we heard that sort of their experience with local media was sometimes overwhelming. I know there's so much content that I have trouble keeping up with it. And so I appreciate that there's all this stuff, but it makes me feel overwhelmed, which is this sort of, at first, contradictory thing, but it kind of makes sense if you think about your routine and your information habits. And we also heard that people really liked this idea that there were like a lot of hustlers and there were all these sort of diversity and different characters, but it also made it hard for people to find places they wanted to hang out, sort of other locals that they wanted to connect with. And people like Malik are sort of solving this problem, right, with things like CreativeMornings that try to build that community. And so we found that there were these two big challenges for people, even while there's all this energy in Miami. And so that helped us to think about what's the experience of users. We talked to all these people, we went on the whiteboard, we mapped different users' journeys, right? We put it all out visually. So this is one person's commute. We followed him. He drives to the Metro Rail and then takes the Metro Rail downtown. And then here he tries to get on the Metro Mover and it's super weird. So, you map out these journeys and you look for common things, right? And we found that, for example, everyone has this time between when they wake up and when they get ready that they're trying to, sort of get their day started and whatever. That's when we deliver our newsletter. We found that there were a whole lot of people who had that same bit of time and that, we try to service, so we wanted to capture that time. And the only way you discover these kind of opportunities is by talking to enough people to understand their day that you can sort of target something you want to work on. And there are a dozen other opportunities in here that other people should be working on. So all of this process helped us to generate the chart of curious locals that we use every day to think about our users, the 4 different kinds of users that we focus on. And I should say that this is not something that's sort of applicable to everyone. This is just an example, because whatever you're doing, needs its own display, needs its own visualization of things. But we found that a lot of the people we talked to broke down on sort of 2 axes. The first, the x-axis is, how much do you value new experiences in your local life versus habitual experiences? So if you're going to go out to eat, do you want to go to a restaurant that you've never been to before? Or do you want to go to a restaurant that you always go to where you know what you're going to get and you know it's going to be good? And then the second thing was, how active are you seeking information about what's going on around you locally versus how passive are you? And passive people, it's not that you're not looking at information, it's just that you may not be the discoverer. You may not be scouring all the websites looking for things and sending them to your friends. People who are active are out there sharing, right? They're out there talking to folks. And they find an article and they post it or they text it to their friend. Hey, do you want to go to this thing? Hey, here's this information. And passive people are more receiving that, right? They're looking at it. And so we found that there were sort of 4 types of people. People who are really active and valued new experiences are people who value adventure and discovery. They're people we talk to who every weekend they're doing something new. They never want to do the same thing twice. And those people value having that social sort of capital of, I went to this new place before anybody else. They're the people who go to the opening parties of everything, right? Like, I was there first, and it was really cool, and now you should go too. The passengers are people who, this is your friend who won't go anywhere by themselves, but we'll go there with you. And they'll go anywhere, right? If you were like, I'm going to go chop a person up and throw them in the river, they'd be like, are you going? And you'd be like, yeah. I'm like, all right, I'll be there. So the passenger is these two people are kind of linked, right? But they want camaraderie. It's like I want the comfort of exploring with people I care about. I don't really care what we're doing. The regulars are people we found who value like belonging. It's the people who want the cheers experience. We were shocked how many times we heard this from people we interviewed, where people would say, "I'm looking for that cheers experience in Miami." Which is kind of a peculiar thing to say because that show is like 40 years old. But everyone wants that moment where you walk into a bar and somebody knows your name and they know your order and you sort of feel that instant camaraderie. And a lot of people in Miami were seeking that. And then the people at the top are people who are like building organizations and companies, and they sort of care about a legacy or a cause that they're really trying to work on. And so anyway, we found that this chart was really helpful for us in thinking about our users. And when we build new content, when we build events, we try to think about who of these people is it going to serve, and which of the users, which of the real people that we talk to, who we sort of have their faces in our head, would this be interesting to? And we try to refresh that research as often as we can because it helps us make better stuff. But it's a difficult thing to invest in this process, particularly when you're running at something. You have a job, you have another job you're doing while you're trying to launch something, or your organization is a big company and it's moved slowly and there's lots of people you have to run a decision by, whatever. This is really hard to dedicate the time to. But the stuff you make will be way better for it because it allows you to understand what it's like for people, and that can be a really transformative experience if you're open to it. And for us, it lets us hear the kind of thing that truly humbles us on a daily basis. And we wanted to make sure we return to the actual theme of humility. And this is the kind of stuff that keeps us going. It's the kind of stuff that makes us feel like we may, at some point, make something that's useful to more people because people tell us stuff like this. And the idea for us that people would give us a few minutes of their precious time, which is the best resource, the most precious resource anyone has, is really remarkable for us. And it's been a really gratifying experience to have some people get our newsletter and like it, come to our events and like it. So if you're not already doing that, we hope you will too, but most importantly, we want to leave you with the question, what questions will you ask? And what things will you admit that you don't know? We'd love to talk about that with you. It's our business, and we're also excited about it on a personal level. But most importantly, we hope you make awesome stuff by investing in your own ignorance. Thank you very much.